Hey everyone, it's Keely Maryum. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing a little Q&A video. I asked you guys to leave me questions on Instagram and YouTube, so I'm just answering those questions that you asked me. The first question I'm answering is, how was your life before Islam and how did you fall in love with Islam? Thank you so much for this lovely question. I think it's such a good question to start off with. I would say before Islam, I honestly was very depressed for a very long time because I mentioned in previous videos that I went through stages of being agnostic, of questioning what I really believed in. And so I was very just like confused for a very long time. So if you don't know what agnosticism is, it's basically the belief that anything can be true and nothing can be true at the same time. It's kind of like basically saying you're kind of uncertain in a way. So whenever I would think about the possibility that there was nothing, like there was nothing in an afterlife or anything like that, just that's it, like your consciousness ceases, that's it, that was very unsettling and disturbing to say the least. It just makes you feel like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of life? What's the purpose, you know? And I feel like I really just needed something to believe in. It also didn't make sense to me that there would be nothing, or that there was nothing that created us, that it was all just based on science and the Big Bang Theory. None of this made sense to me because I thought at the least there had to be something that created everything. Like, just because of how complex everything is. I don't know, everything just like, it just all seemed like too big of a coincidence. Yeah, just in short, honestly, I was just very unhappy for a very long time. And honestly, Islam has come into my life and has changed me in ways that I can't even describe. I feel like it really has made me a better person, and more conscious of my actions and my choices in life. Oh, and the second part of the question was, how did you fall in love with Islam? Honestly, I was researching about Islam for a really long time, and I knew pretty early on, I would say, that I was like, this is the religion for me. But yeah, I don't know if I can really pinpoint exactly what it was, because there was honestly an accumulation of so many different things that I just fell in love with, like the concept of Allah's mercy. There's so many verses in the Quran that I thought were so beautiful. There's one verse, I don't know the exact wording, so I'm really sorry. I'll leave the verse on the screen here. So yeah, I'm just basically gonna kind of summarize, so I'm sorry, it's not perfect. But it's basically this concept that if you have the intention that you're gonna do a sinful act, but you change your mind and you realize that this is wrong, then it is counted as a good deed and you are rewarded for that. So yeah, it was things like that I thought were really beautiful. I know sometimes people see Islam as just a bunch of rules, but that's not really the case. I think there's so much more to it. And these rules, these guidelines, they're there for a reason. They're there because they're there to better us and to help us. Like, they're there to help us live our life the best possible way. Anyways, I'm sorry, this is a really long response for one question. I'm gonna move on to the next one now. So the next question is, do you think social media is toxic? I think this question requires a lot of nuance to answer. I don't think it's a simple like yes or no, and I'm sorry if that's not very satisfying, but this is just my opinion. And so what I think is that there is benefit in it, but there's also a lot of negative to it as well. Let's just go with the negative first, I guess. So I think it can be toxic in that there is toxic beauty standards where girls just go through like these really extremes to meet these beauty standards. I also think it can be toxic in glamorizing immoral behavior, especially to a very young and very easily influenced audience. Also, even just disrespectful behavior towards others online and being hateful towards others. Even in the Muslim community, I think we see this a lot, especially on Muslim TikTok. There's a lot of people just being disrespectful to one another, and a lot of the times it's just that we kind of notice the negative a little bit more in that way. So with disrespectful and hateful behavior, I think it's that we we just tend to pick up on that more. So I do also think that there is another side to it though that is more beneficial, and this is one that I've noticed a lot, especially on TikTok. There's so many people who have learned about Islam through TikTok and who've even converted because of TikTok, because there are these people spreading Islam and, you know, like debates and things like that, and people watch this and they learn about Islam, and I think that part of it is super beneficial. I also saw recently, like a few months ago, there was a lot of TikTokers who were, you know, stopping, you know, posting music or listening to music. I just think that was really beneficial for a lot of people because a lot of people followed that as well. So it was really interesting to see that. I think sometimes it kind of depends on your usage of social media, like how much you're using it, like if it's just kind of overtaking your life. Obviously, like too much of it is not good, but it also depends on like who you're following, the types of content that you're interacting with. But personally, what I just try to do to make social media a little bit less toxic for me is I will sometimes go through all the people that I'm following and I will see if this is benefiting me or if it's just maybe not really benefiting me in any way, or if maybe I'm comparing myself to another person, or if it's just toxic. For some reason or another, I will, you know, unfollow this person. It's not a bad thing to unfollow people. It doesn't mean that you dislike this person or you hate this person. It's just, it's better for your mental health and it makes social media a little bit less toxic for us. It's not necessarily that other people are making it toxic. I think sometimes we make it toxic for ourselves by even comparing ourselves to other women. So yeah, I think it really does depend. I think social media definitely has to be used with caution, and I think it is a very huge and prevalent part of our lives, and it's one that we can't really escape, but we have to learn how to use it responsibly. And so the next question is, would you consider doing a hijab tutorial in the future? Honestly, I've kind of considered it. I also feel like most of the time the way that I wear my hijab isn't really anything special. I just kind of throw it on. But lately I have kind of been like experimenting a little bit lately, while also like making sure like my neck is covered, everything's like properly covered, you know? And so I would like to kind of do like full coverage hijab tutorials and also make sure that like my neck is covered the whole time that I'm doing it. I think that's the tricky part for me, because honestly hijab tutorials look like so much fun to film and I would love to try it. I think my concern though is just making sure that my neck is covered the entire time. Like I do have undercaps that cover my neck. Yeah, I don't know if they would cover my neck fully the entire time that I'm filming. So yeah, that's just where it gets a little bit tricky. If anyone has any good recommendations for undercaps that fully cover the neck and that aren't very see-through, because sometimes they can be a little bit see-through, please leave them in the comments down below. Now, someone asked, where is your family, basically, and that's probably because I don't show anybody else in my vlogs, like it's just me. Yeah, I do have family, I just don't show them in my vlogs. I am an only child, but like my parents, I don't really think they would want to be in my videos. They're a little bit more private and they don't even have like social media at all. So yeah, I just don't like put anybody in my videos. I also would rather keep that private. I do live with my husband, and yeah, we don't like show our relationship at all online on our social medias because that is private to us. It's not a secret. I've mentioned him in videos before, like I've talked about him, but I just prefer not to show him because we did decide together that our relationship is private. And so this also does tie in with the whole social media being toxic thing, because I think sometimes social media can be a little bit toxic if you bring your spouse into it, like if you're showing your spouse on your public accounts. I think that it can get a little bit toxic. Sometimes there can be a little bit of negativity. So yeah, I just don't really feel comfortable with the internet weighing in on my personal relationships. I'm not judging anybody else who keeps their relationship public. I think it's a very personal matter. Yeah, also because of issues like, you know, like the evil eye and stuff like that, I think it's just best to just keep it off of social media for me personally. This next question, I'm going to kind of combine two questions into one because they're kind of asking similar things in a sense. So the first one is, how do you manage to focus on religion while maintaining hobbies like reading? And then the other one is, how do you balance Deen and Dunya? So to start out, I would say you really have to prioritize things. Like obligatory acts of worship always come first. If something is causing you to put off your daily prayers, I would say you have to just kind of cut that thing out. Really have to like make sure that your prayers and things like that are top priority and nothing can ever come past that. And make sure that you're not putting it off for other things. Make sure that you're not saying that this other thing is more important than, you know, than Allah, than your prayers, than Islam. But I guess like balancing Deen and Dunya could be so many different things, honestly. Like it can be things like, even like in this other comment that said about hobbies, it could be personal relationships, it could be family, it could be, you know, your job, it could be financial situations, it could be so many different things. So it's really hard to kind of like dive deep into this in this video. So going back to the hobbies part of the question, for me, hobbies are really just like kind of like an extra fun thing in life that I do, you know, when I have the spare time. So I always make sure that, you know, it's at a time when I have a little bit of spare time, so like reading and things like that. And I'm not always consistent with my hobbies. Also, another little tip that I have when it comes to like being able to do hobbies is kind of like multitasking. So what I mean by that is like I do crochet, and so when I crochet I could very easily just like listen to something else, and I even find that it actually helps me to focus better. Sometimes what I do listen to is like an audiobook, but other times it's an Islamic lecture or like a podcast or something of that sort that's very beneficial. Honestly, all in all, I think the main thing is prioritizing. You have to make sure that like you know that Islam is a priority to you and nothing comes first. Also, if I'm being fully transparent, I haven't always had this much time to do hobbies. It's just I have a lot of extra time at the moment because I've graduated university and I don't currently have a job, so it just means that I have a lot more time to pick up these hobbies that I kind of put to the side while I was doing university. Yeah, so maybe not everybody would be able to do hobbies like I can. Like I know sometimes life is very busy for everybody and not everybody can juggle everything. The last question I'm gonna answer asks, are you married? And what led you to Islam? So yes, I am married. He is honestly a very big part of my revert journey. He's the person who really initially introduced me to Islam. I was never really around many Muslims growing up. I do go really in depth with this in another video, so I'm just kind of gonna make this a little bit brief because that video is pretty long. I feel like there's a lot of details to it as well, so you can check out that video if you want to see like the full thing, but I'll just kind of like break it down, like summarize it a little bit, and just kind of like be a little bit like vague, I guess, because I did go into it so deep. So yeah, when I met my husband, that's when I learned about Islam. I knew really nothing about Islam before that. All I knew before was that Muslims believed in the same God as Christians, and I grew up as a Christian and, you know, kind of flip-flopped between what I believed in. You know, like I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of uncertainty. So yeah, when I met my husband, I was Christian. I knew that I believed in God. Personally, I think a lot of parts of Christianity were very confusing for me, even when I was younger, when I was growing up, going to church. A lot of it was very confusing. Like the concept of the Trinity was incredibly confusing. So the Trinity is one of the things that Islam obviously dealt with, that there's like no Trinity. I think a really important point in my revert journey was when I went to the mosque, when my husband took me to the mosque. This was before we had been married. He took me to the mosque. It was supposed to be a class at the mosque for new reverts, but the class was canceled that day, and so there was just kind of like people sitting around that didn't realize that it was canceled, and so they were talking to me about, you know, their revert journeys, and I had been given different resources to look up online and different pamphlets, and I think this was honestly a really big turning point for me, and this is what really kind of helped me to really dive into learning about Islam and having all of these really good resources to be able to look into. And honestly, this one lady at the masjid was so helpful. I remember she gave me all of these sources, she gave me pamphlets. She knew that I was a science student at the time, so she gave me this pamphlet on scientific evidence of Islam, and yeah, I found that really, really useful. And then from there, I just really like dove in and started researching Islam, and it took me a really long time. I think it took me around 2 years. I'm kind of unsure about the exact amount of time that it took. I actually fasted for 2 Ramadans before I even converted to Islam. If you want to know more about like how I reverted, you can check out my revert journey. I have an entire video on that goes into this in a little bit more depth, but I can't really do that in this video because it would just take way too long. Anyways, I think this video is going to be incredibly long as it is, so I'm probably going to stop it here. Thank you all for watching, and Inshallah, I can do another Q&A in the future, maybe in a few months' time, and maybe get to some more questions if you didn't have your question answered. But thank you all for such lovely and thought-provoking questions. I really enjoyed answering them, so thank you so much, and thank you all for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe.